Hi, this is Margie Coles, and I'm here at the UX Strategy Summit Conference in San Francisco. And I'm here to interview two wonderful people from Expedia, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Tammy Snow. I'm a user experience researcher at Expedia. Actually, I'm the manager. I should say I'm the boss.
And I'm Bhatia, and I'm a principal user experience lead at Expedia. So kind of overseeing teams that work on the shopping parts of our website.
So we just finished a really actually inspiring presentation that had EMG, and I'm not sure I'm going to say the long term for that, but putting little electrodes on one's face, but looking at how to possibly measure emotion, both delight and frustration. And I thought it was just really amazing because we think a lot about user experience in terms of frustration and problems with usability. But as I think I mentioned to you before, the whole notion of being able to really focus in delight is really new and amazing, and I was kind of curious as to how that all got kicked off at Expedia.
So I think over the last 5+ years, we've seen in the industry more and more products. And I'm not just talking about the travel shopping industry, but just the product industry in general, the consumer product industry. Then we've seen a lot of products that have this sort of stickiness and customer devotion to them. Largely based on just how delightful they are to use. And of course, the main example that everyone always talks about is Apple. And so this is becoming sort of this topic internally, not just at our company, I'm sure. It's like, how are we working to build our products in a way that we're improving the customer's experience so much so that they love us and they are happy to be using our site. And so I think that's really probably where it started. And then the question came up of like, but how do we know when we're achieving it?
We kind of look at it as a differentiator. It's no longer enough just to be usable.
Right.
You got to be delightful.
And then I was struck by the one comment, the hook, when some of the customers or the users were engaged with the site and how all of a sudden you saw a spike and you realized that they were looking at a photo. And then you realized that you were seeing what but not why. And so I'm kind of curious how you see like the need to really pair ethnographic or contextual research with this new research of looking at sort of some real hard data from people's emotional or from their physical responses. But how do you see the ethnographic research fitting in with that to make sense out of it all?
Yeah, right. So I think the example we gave is a really perfect example of how you would pair the two. You identify something that you're not really sure why you're seeing what you're seeing. So in our example, we knew that people were seeing photos, they were feeling delight, but we didn't know why. And so doing ethnographic research really afforded us the opportunity to see people in their natural environment and watch the things that they were doing and then look for, are there places where we believe that we're creating that emotional hook? And in this particular case, it was just so obvious because we didn't have to have the EMG hook to them. It was just, oh my God, that's it. So they were so expressive, almost like the lady pulling her hair. Like, you just know that they're delighted. So that's how you get the why.
Yeah. And so what was the most surprising part for you, either one of you, in terms of doing this research and what you thought you might find and what you found and where even you might venture to think it might go in the future, not just as Expedia, but elsewhere?
I'll speak to that because I was a little skeptical about using the methodology when we first started. And I was surprised by quite a lot of it, to be honest. One of the things I was really surprised by is I thought for sure that by hooking people up, we were introducing yet another level of discomfort into doing studies where we're trying to observe natural behavior. Right. And I was really concerned that that was going to create something so unnatural that we wouldn't see anything. Right. And I'm still just so surprised that every single participant we have in, they seem to forget that it's there. And we usually ask them afterward, how was that for you? Was it uncomfortable? Oh my God, I forgot it was there. We had one guy get up, he's going to start walking off. It's like, no, wait, I got it. He totally forgot it was on him.
And for you, how about for you?
Surprise.
Yeah, surprise and anticipation of where it might go.
Yeah, I mean, I think what has been encouraging about this to me is in the UX field and in kind of product design overall, we've really struggled with how to show when a product that we're designing is actually creating that good experience, other than just measuring on kind of the live site analytics whether the customer did certain behaviors or not. But beyond those measurable behaviors, if there isn't a behavior associated with the delight, how do we measure that it actually occurred? And we believe that in order to be an important brand that customers love, we have to continue creating experiences that solve their needs and make them happy. And, you know, I think this finally gives us a way to measure that and get some early signal that we're succeeding at that. So I think to me that's sort of the exciting part. The exciting part about where this is going is we don't have, it's a much quicker way to get that signal than previously where, you know, maybe we'd have to wait and see, did that customer ever come back to us and shop with us again? And maybe that's an indication of whether they liked using our experience or not, whether they were satisfied with it. So again, just that early indicator of customer satisfaction and are we delivering what they want?
I have one more question. So you talked a lot about not abandonment, but about delight. And I was just thinking, how does this tie into maybe future research you might do in terms of just gaining more insights about different people and different tolerances for frustration, or maybe sometimes people just in an initial sign-up process might wander away, and maybe trying to figure out how to engage people with those typical metrics of whether you converted or not. Do you see any way to leverage this type of research into also looking at the downside, not just delight, but how to minimize the downside? The frustration.
I think that's actually where maybe the earlier opportunities are going to exist, not only for ourselves but for other companies,
Right.
because it's a little bit, that is kind of more what companies have traditionally done. It's a little bit closer to like this old school usability.
Yeah.
So, and it's a little bit easier to say, oh, we identified a frustrator, let's remove that. A lot more difficult to say, we're not really sure what's going to create delight, but let's try a few things. Mm-hmm. So you know what you have something there with the frustration.
Yeah.
I think in terms of long term, for me as a research geek, I think that where I see this going, not only for ourselves, but I'm hoping for other companies, is that you find creative ways to utilize physiological measures of emotion in natural environments, not just in a lab, because I think that affords you the opportunity to do maybe some longitudinal studies where you're not just tracking the emotions one time, but you're tracking emotions over time. You're doing it, people in their own environment doing their own thing that they already care about.
Right.
So
somebody jumping into the field might think, oh, great, we'll just go get ourselves some EMG equipment and we're ready to go. And I know that you have some thoughts about that, but we'll start over here.
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the kind of takeaways that we identified through this process was that, and like we mentioned a minute ago, EMG is really great at identifying that an emotion happened, and it can tell you it was either on the red line or the green line, but in other words, the tension line or the delight line. But there is a lot of room for interpretation in that. And, on the red line, we've seen focus show up in one form or another, and we've seen frustration show up in one form or another. And on the delight line, there may be sort of subtle happiness, and there may be like jumping out of my seat, excited happiness. So there's just a lot, and it may look different for every single participant. So there's a lot of room for interpretation. And, like we said in the presentation, it's really kind of that balance of art and science. It looks like a science, but there's some art to the interpretation.
Yep. Yeah, and I think to that point that it requires a level of experience and expertise. So you have to be very careful to make sure that the practitioners doing research with this actually really know what they're seeing and how to make sense of it. And that takes practice.
Right.
So I think one other danger that I thought of is if people start getting so carried away with, I'm just going to create delight, and they start experimenting and they see delight and they say, I've got it, they have to still be aware of the utility. Like, is it still useful? And are you going so overboard with the delight that you're no longer giving people something useful? So it's balancing it with everything else, because those other things still matter.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that actually has popped into my mind, just in terms of we want to be differentiating ourselves, and that is something that people try so hard that sometimes the usefulness, which is the ordinary, can actually kind of fade and all of a sudden become a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that is the all of this, like going on a mission to create more delight in your product, matters when you already have a product that's delivering the baseline necessary experience to the customer. I definitely believe that. I mean, don't we all wish that baseline, experiences that did what they needed also created delight? They won't always, but sometimes even that is enough to create delight. So I think the goal should be usable and meeting expectations and then exceeding expectations, and then somewhere in there, depending on your product and what the customer expectations are, you may find that you've achieved some delight.
Nice summary. Thanks so much for meeting with me. It was a delight to listen to you both, and it was really special to find out that we all live in Seattle.
Yeah.
Yes, that's great. It was nice to meet you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.